Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Puck Watching STL. We're happy to have you all back. It's been a little bit since our live stream, since the unfortunate loss from the Blues back in early June. We recorded, I think, right, Nick, something like that with the award ceremony.
Hey, we had the interview. We had the
Well, we had
interview.
the interview, but not live.
Not live. First time being
Yeah,
back live. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we hope you enjoyed Chris. He had a lot of content, and if you haven't listened to that, we really it's very much worth your time because Chris was outstanding, and he had a lot to say there. And we actually got to talk to him more a couple weeks later, and he had a lot more to say. And I'm sure we'll get into that in another podcast when we talk more about Blues free agency coming up soon, July 1st. But before we do that, we have to introduce our next guest. He's Sam from STL Analytics, large presence on Twitter. We're happy to welcome Sam. Sam, welcome to the show.
How's it going? Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you for coming on. And we'll switch the screen here to focus it on you. So, Sam, briefly, before we get into Blues talk here, because that's going to be the basis of this, and we can't wait to hear all your thoughts on it because you've had some great stuff that you've been posting. But we want to hear a little bit about your channel and how you kind of got this all started and what the inspiration kind of came from.
Yeah. Honestly, it started on Instagram probably 5 or 6 years ago. I guess I was a senior in high school, so it was 2019, right before the big run. But yeah, I mean, I always would just talk about hockey with my friends in high school, and I didn't really have an outlet beyond that. So I was like, all right, I'll make a little Instagram account where I'll talk about Blues prospects. And then the 2019 run happened, and I started kind of getting deeper and deeper into hockey and just learning more and more about the game. And obviously, I got more into stats too. And then a couple of years ago, moved it over to Twitter, and I've been tweeting there since. And had a couple projects, like just freelance hockey analytics projects on the side that I've done throughout the years, but nothing too crazy. So yeah.
Well, yeah, you've been very great at it, and that's why we're having you on here because some of these opinions we need to get out more in the open. I know
Appreciate it.
for a fact, but so I guess for us too is kind of the same. Getting the 2019 run, it sparked so many people's Blues fandom. I feel like even more, and now we're talking about it like this a couple of years later, but still. But before we get to what high school did you go to? I know it's the classic St. Louis question.
I went to MICDS.
MICDS. All right, we're both the SMEC guys, so we
Okay,
won't hold it
nice.
against you. But let's get in the Blues since we'll keep that brief, Sam. But so your focus is on analytics, as your Twitter profile says. So talking about the Blues' performance this season, up and down. But I think a lot of us have a lot of recency bias, and they say it's all up since we made the first round of the playoffs, and then obviously the disappointment in Game 7. So on an analytical standpoint, where were the St. Louis Blues? And I think let's start from the beginning, back in October, and start to make our way to the March and April days when they started to improve.
Yeah. Honestly, take it back even a little further to
Yep.
before last season, to the 23-24 season. They were, I mean, on paper, I think that team was one of the 5 worst teams in the league. I mean, they finished, they almost made the playoffs. They got like 92 points. But, I mean, a lot of that was just completely unsustainable with the goaltending they got that year and just the way that they're winning games. And then they started last year, even under Drew Bannister, like before they started winning a bunch of games. I think it was improved, especially on the defensive side of the puck. I think, um, prior year they were bottom 10 in pretty much everything, but to start the year under Bannister, they started to allow less quality. Obviously, they weren't generating anything at all. And then after Montgomery took over, pretty instantly. I wouldn't say instantly. Like I'd say it took a couple of weeks, but by the new year, they had pretty drastically turned it around. Almost pretty similar to what happened in 2019. Not as drastic because in 2019 they were they were the best team in the league for 4 months leading up to the playoffs. This team wasn't quite that good, but they were much improved. Top half the league in obviously defensive stats. They were top 5, top 10. Offense, by volume, they weren't as great. By quality, they were a little better, but not as great, but still much improved from the start of the season. But yeah, I mean, just the improvement that they had throughout the season with the coaching change was pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Sam, I have said those exact same things, especially regarding 2023, 2024. I think a lot of Blues fans were like, "Oh, 92 points, that they were right there." And you're like, "No, no, no, no." There were a lot of progressions that need to be made from multiple fronts. And so I wholeheartedly agree. Even without the stats, it was glaringly obvious that was
Yeah.
the case. And they were bailed out time and time again by Hofer and Bennington, especially. But I guess the next question here is, is there a player in your mind that are an average Blues fan, if you don't have stats in front of you, it can be tough to tell, even if you are watching the game sometimes. But based on the data that you kind of collect and look at day by day, is there one that is underrated that people just don't appreciate enough, maybe because they're just not flashy?
I think with the Blues, it's a little tricky because I feel like with a lot of guys, it's sort of what you see is what you get. But I think usually when it comes to underrated players in sorry about that, in fans' eyes, it's usually guys who are contributing on the defensive side of the puck. It's usually defensive forwards, I think, are the guys who are most underrated by someone who's not plugged into stats and is watching from more of a fan perspective. I think because just in the nature of the eye test, we see offense and we see flash, and obviously we can quantify it very easily too, because more or less the best offensive players are the players who are going to score the most points. Whereas with defense, it's quite a lot trickier. So I think from a Blues perspective, looking at an underrated player like that, I know he got a lot of credit this year, but I think Radek Faksa was great. Like that guy drove excellent defensive results all year. He really has his entire career, honestly, and he got a lot of credit at the end of the season, deservingly so. But I think honestly, all season he was really good. It's kind of you don't always notice it because he's really really slow and he never scores. But um, yeah, he's one. And let's see. Like I think Matthew Joseph is a nice player. Like I get why he's not an everyday guy for the Blues, but like when he's in the lineup, I think he brings a lot and doesn't really get appreciated too much, even by the coaching staff. But I guess those are my two guys. I don't know if those are great answers, but I think with the Blues, it's a little tough.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Luke, if you'd let me,
Yeah,
the Foxa thing, I just got so frustrated with Foxa with the penalties that he took. It seemed
Yeah.
like there was a January, February stint where he was literally in the penalty box every game. So that was why I was like, get rid of this guy. I don't care what he does if the Blues make the playoffs. But then all of a sudden, you get into the first round and the guy's like, a +4. He's got points in, a couple of those games, and his faceoff percentage is the best on the team. And you don't really realize that until you get into the playoffs that maybe some guys, Sam Bennett, for example, are just kind of built for situations that are maybe a little bit different than the regular season. And I think that's kind of how I feel about Foxa a bit. Maybe not the best regular season guy, but can definitely come in clutch as a veteran and a great face-off man in the postseason. I don't know if you would agree with that or not, but that was my interpretation of him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think he brought a lot of value in the regular season too. I mean, yeah, that penalty streak he had, I think you nailed it. Like early January, February, it was like every game this guy is tripping somebody or lazy stick, and
Yeah.
it was kind of ridiculous. But I mean, I think by and large throughout the season, just the value he brought on the defensive side of the puck was I'd say pretty underrated. But yeah, I mean, he's a guy who definitely raised his game in the playoffs too.
Yeah. So I think you can talk about Joseph and Foxa and you individually, but I think for the team itself backing up still, what were some of those stats that you talked about it with the defensive side and the offensive side that were like pretty staggering and improvements? Like, again, I don't really know much about these advanced stats. Like pretty much the extent to where we go is the expected goals and, saves saved above expected, etc. Right. So, but what were some of those from Blues players this season, or like from the team itself, that stuck out? That's like, okay, this is an improvement. This is kind of a digression. Like, where did you kind of see that as you were kind of evaluating this team all season?
Yeah, I think on the team level, and I don't have numbers off the top of my head, but like, just the drastic improvement in expected goals against per 60 at 5-on-5. Obviously last season they were bottom 10, probably I think like 25th, 26th in the league. I think from the time Montgomery took over to the end of the season, they were top 5. They were a top 5 even strength defensive team. So that was the most shocking or staggering on the team level. I think player-wise improvement. I think honestly, I mean, he wasn't here before the season, but Cam Fowler. I don't know if you guys saw any of his games in Anaheim before he came over, but he was dreadful to start the season in Anaheim. I think it has less to say about him, it has less to say about his ability as a player, more so as he was a player who was just kind of checked out there because he requested a trade in the summer. He wanted to leave. The Ducks were bad. He wasn't really giving it his all, but he was probably one of the worst defensemen at the start of the season. And then he comes to St. Louis, and I mean, he was easily a top 20 defenseman from the time he got here to the end of the season. So that was one that really stood out to me.
Yeah, we talked a lot about Cam Fowler on this show, and I think initially when he got traded, I think a lot of fans who wouldn't necessarily follow the NHL, outside the lens of St. Louis would say that I don't really know about this trade. His point totals kind of suck, when he came over here, but I think people didn't really realize just the extent of this guy's experience in the league. I think number one, and obviously he brought a huge veteran presence to the St. Louis Blues team. But like what I would say, following up on that with the goals scored above expected per 60, right? What was the kind of breaking point with that? So was that just improvements from Thomas and Kyrou and the rest of the forward core with Montgomery coming in, or was that also kind of pitched in by the defense alongside, Fowler, and improvements with Parayko as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think that there's quite a lot of different factors that were driving it. I mentioned earlier that they had started to improve even a little bit under Bannister, and I think the biggest reason is Montgomery, just the structure that the Blues were able to develop under him, and just the way they were playing, just the team game, that leads to good results all around. But I think if you go back even a little further, if you look at all the guys they brought in the offseason, whether we talked about Foxa, Joseph, obviously Holloway's a great defensive forward. Broberg was really good defensively this year. That's Bolduc was a pretty solid defensive player this year. That's 5 guys right there who they brought in from the previous year who were, large upgrades on defense. Like, looking back on it, I guess maybe we shouldn't have been as surprised that they improved a lot defensively when you look at, the roster turnover year to year. But I think there was also some internal improvement too. Thomas was good. Kyrou, obviously, I'd say he improved defensively this year. Neighbors is a year older. Parayko too. I think it's a combo of all those 3 things. It's the guys they brought in, it's the coaching change, and then it's just internal improvement too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I would agree. I would say, I think Montgomery has some to do with it, but Nick Leddy only played 5 games in the regular season, and then you brought in guys like Broberg. Parayko had a record year, and then you throw in all the offensive forwards that are also contributing on the defensive end as well. So totally agree with you. And you don't really know if Montgomery had everything to do with it, but he's got to have something to do with it, just given how much better they were throughout
Yeah.
the entire year, especially on the streak. It wasn't even close. But
honestly, Nick Leddy not playing for 40 games or 50 games was a non-insignificant reason why they improved defensively this year too.
Yeah, you won't find us being Nick Leddy defenders. So I totally agree with you. But we kind of mentioned how many offseason moves they made last year, and we are quickly approaching July 1st. And it seems, and maybe there's some hope that Blues fans have that they're going to do something. They feel like maybe not us, but there are definitely people out there that think that we're a great player away from being serious contenders. Do you think they're going to make a move pre or even post July 1st? And who do you have in mind for that, I guess?
Yeah. I am definitely one of those people who thinks that they should be trying to acquire, the best player that they can get. I think adding more juice to the top of the roster is like exactly what they need. And I think they're pretty motivated to do it. I don't know if I could put a handicap on if they're gonna make the move to acquire a great player or not, but I think going into this season, you saw how close they were. They basically won that series against the President's Trophy team, and that whole team is coming back. They seem close to being able to contend, at least in my opinion. They played unbelievable hockey for the final 40 games of the season, and they almost won a playoff round. I think they will be motivated to get better, and I think they should be motivated to get better. I don't know if I can put a percentage on it or who I think they're going to get, but I think they will at least try to get better.
Yeah, I would agree. So Jordan Kyrou's no trade clause kicks in July 1st. And I know that he's been so hot and cold in the Blues fan base for a while. I've even questioned, exactly what his role is on the Blues moving forward. This year, he had an outstanding year. And then in the playoffs, him and Schenn had the worst plus minus on the team. And you could tell after he had that hit put on him in game 1 or 2, you could tell he got rattled. You could easily tell that he was probably not the same player as we saw in the whole regular season. So do you think that there's room for improvement for him further? And do you think the Blues should consider even, thinking about him being on the trade block?
Yeah. Good question. I think where he's at now, where he's 26, I think the Jordan Kyrou you have is probably the Jordan Kyrou you're going to get, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because he's a really freaking good player. He scored 36 goals this year and was a really, really good defensive player and had 70 points. Like those players are really, really valuable. And at $8 million, that's a perfect contract for what he's bringing.
Right.
I do think though, can you really win the cup when Kyrou is your second best player? Like that's not a knock on Kyrou. It's more of a knock on the Blues team construction. I don't know. Like I think I'd say probably not if I had to lean one way, but that also doesn't mean I think they should be looking to trade him. But I'm also not opposed to trading them. Like honestly, there's not really many players on this team where if the right deal comes around, I wouldn't look at trading them. So yeah, I think if there's a hockey move out there where you can get significantly better, or let's say, I don't know, I'm just spitballing, like they get Mitch Marner, it's like, okay, do we really need Jordan Kyrou when we have Mitch Marner, who's just a way better version of Jordan Kyrou? I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's 13 days away though, so I don't know. It seems unlikely that something that big is going to happen with Jordan Kyrou. Like I'd be surprised if he's not here next season.
Yeah, it's funny when we were talking about his playoff performance with the plus minus, Nick, and I was kind of thinking about Mitch Marner with this playoff series and how he's been, over the course of his time with Toronto, and he's never showed up. in those big moments for them. And that's, I don't think that's a knock on him, and maybe the entire Toronto Maple Leafs team as well. But I think of those players kind of one and the same, because when you look at the 2 times that Kyrie's been in the playoffs with us, something like that. I don't know if he was on the team when they were the year after, when they played the Avs and got swept. I think he was on the team.
He was.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. So, and he didn't really do much then, but he was still kind of younger. So I don't really foresee a scenario unless something drastically changes. It's kind of the same thing we had with Tarasenko when he was here. He wasn't showing up much in the playoffs until 2019. He showed up a little bit. So I guess there is a huge thing when it comes to the Stanley Cup final too, seeing Sam Bennett, who isn't a really huge regular season guy. He can, but will get you 60 points maybe, but that's really it. So I guess my question is for you is Jordan Kyrou really that guy that can take us long term? And who would be the replacement? I don't really see it being Mitch Marner. So is it somebody who can be a similar type of goal scorer than him, or does it come internally?
I don't know. I think with playoff performance, I think there's obviously truth to guys who elevate their game in the playoffs and guys who shrink in the playoffs. But I think ultimately a lot of it comes down to variance too. Like, Kyrou had a bad playoffs this year, but he also scored 5. I think he scored 5 goals against that Avs team, which was, in my opinion, the best team of the Cap era.
Right.
So like he can perform in the playoffs. He has. And like same thing with Tarasenko too. Like he had years where he sucked. Like the San Jose series in 2016 where Marc-Edouard Vlasic had him in hell. Yeah. And then he has 2019 where he plays the Sharks again, and I think he scored 6 goals in that series. So I think it's a lot of it just comes down to variance. And everyone talks about how goal scorers are streaky. I think with Kyrou, it does go back to like, is he good enough? Like playoffs, regular season, either in the playoffs or the regular season, like is he good enough to be the second best player on your team? And I think if you go and look at recent Cup champions, I think the answer is a resounding no. And like I said earlier, like that's not a knock against Kyrou. He's a really, really good player, paid accordingly, shows up, performs. But like, teams that are winning the Cup have players who are superstars, and I don't know if he's that.
Yeah, I agree with you. One thing more, Nick, I was going to say, veering off a little bit, but still saying on Kyrou with, I think Holloway, is a huge, reason why he elevated his game a little bit in the regular season. I mean, he had his best overall, year of his career this year. He didn't score the most points of his career this year, but he did have it was like a plus 30, something plus minus. And he was always in the minus in every single other year before that. And I don't think it's necessarily all Kyrou improving, but I think it was a lot more of an improvement with his line with Schenn with him. And then obviously with Holloway, who had an outstanding season. So I guess maybe it's also a team structure thing too, with having Holloway there with them. But the question is, maybe if they don't trade him, which I don't think they will, maybe getting that top 6 center that could replace Braden Schenn, somebody like Sam Bennett or somebody else that can maybe elevate their game even more when it matters most.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best option that they have. I would agree. Like, it's thinking that there's going to be an upgrade to Jordan Kyrou out there. I mean, besides Mitch Marner, which I don't think is going to happen. Yeah. It's just not out there. Like you kind of you have what you have, right? And you want to add to that, and you want to put the guys you have in the best position to succeed. So yeah, I mean, I would agree.
Yeah. I would put the odds of or percentage chance that the Blues sign Marner or Bennett at below 1%.
Yeah,
so
I would too.
I mean, we can be optimistic, and I know that we were excited about it, but Sam Bennett just won the Conn Smythe. He wants to stay in Florida. Mitch Marner's looking for $14 million a year. So I truly don't know how they would be able to swing that, even if we were really, really excited about it and really wanted to go after him. But transitioning a little bit, Sam, I wanted to ask you this question about prospects and the development of the Blues for the future. Mm-hmm. I would still consider Dvorsky and Snuggerud prospects. obviously Snuggerud
Yep.
got a handful of games, got some valuable minutes in the playoffs, and I thought he played really, really well.
Yep.
And Dvorsky had a couple of games, didn't really do much. I don't really know what we can expect from a guy that was 19 years old and getting his first licks in the NHL and didn't play a lot of minutes. But what are your thoughts on both of those players and the potential and their ceiling, given the sample size and the minors as well? And how do you think they're going to be used next season too?
Yeah, I would agree. Those two are probably the two best prospects, and they are prospects. Um, I'll start with Snuggerud. I think I love him. I agree. I thought he was really really good in the playoffs. I think you just really saw what Snuggerud is going to be at his best. Well, maybe not even at his best but you see the base of what Snuggerud's game is. He's going to compete really hard. He's going to be really strong in the corners. He's going to dig pucks out. He's going to take hits to make plays. He's going to open plays up under pressure. And then when he's in the offensive zone, he can rip it. I think I thought he would bring a little bit more of a physical edge to his game. So I think that's something that obviously he'll make a priority this summer, because in college, it was tough to get that guy off the puck, and people would hit him and they would go down. Whereas in the NHL, he looked like the smallest guy on the Blues, but that's forgivable, right? Because the youngest guy hasn't had enough time to put on muscle and weight. But yeah, I think Snuggerud is going to be really good, and next year I think it's pretty realistic to expect him to be in the top 6. I mean, he had one game where I'm pretty sure he led in forward ice time in the first round as
Wow.
a guy who played 7 regular season games for the playoffs. So I think it's fair to expect him to get top 6 minutes most of the season. And, I don't think it's outlandish to expect him to score 20 to 25 goals, because he's going to get put in the spots with good players, and he's a good player himself. Yeah,
Yeah.
with Dvorsky, I think it's a little trickier. I've always been a little lower on Dvorsky, um, but I think he had a really good year this year, especially as a 19-year-old who I think he just turned 20 like a couple days ago, who's playing in the American Hockey League. You're playing games, 3 games in 3 days. You're playing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Your legs are dead if you're not used to it. If you're a 19-year-old playing games on Sunday. And he scored a bunch of points this year. He was good. Um, I think there's a lot more development to go with him too. I would like to see him get an extended run in the NHL next year, and I think he will. I'm not sure how great it's going to be, but if they put him in the right spots, like Dvorsky, similar to Snuggerud, if you put him with talented players, he's got a great shot. He's going to score. Um, I don't know. I think it might be tricky for him to handle the pace of play at center, at least initially, but I think he'll figure it out down the line and become a pretty decent player. But for next year, I think it's just about getting experience, and I don't have super high expectations for him next year, but he could surprise.
Yeah. So you said that you were a little bit lower on Dvorsky than you were on Snuggerud. So where does that kind of stem from? Because I always thought that, I mean, again, we're not a huge prospect show, so I don't do a ton of research on that and what he was doing in the AHL and beyond that. But in the World Juniors, he was spectacular too. So, and Snuggerud didn't really get, I guess, or wasn't necessarily in that much of a spotlight in that World Juniors than what Dvorsky was on. I think it was the Czech Republic or something like that.
Yeah, the Slovaks.
The Slovakia. So where does that kind of stem from? You being lower on him?
Honestly, in comparison to Snuggerud, I think like Snuggerud just he does more, in my opinion. Like there's games where you watch Dvorsky and you have to like look for him, whereas Snuggerud is he's going to get the puck and make a play every shift. Um, that's sort of my thing with Dvorsky. The pace of play too isn't fantastic. I think he's improved as a skater, but he's not the fleetest of foot. Um, I don't know. I think when it comes to play driving, Dvorsky works best when he's got someone who's gonna carry the puck, get the puck up ice for him, and then he can, look in the offensive zone for a shot. And obviously Dvorsky's really good on the boards too. Whereas Snuggerud, it's like Snuggerud's going to be the guy handling the puck a lot, even though he's also a little bit heavy of feet. I wouldn't say he has as much finesse as Dvorsky, but he's always looking to push the puck up the ice, push play. He can really shoot it too. So yeah, like the simple answer is I just think Snuggerud does more, but they're still both really good prospects.
Yeah. And then moving to the other parts of the prospect system, and I think we're blessed to have that. The Blues have a very well built up one right now. I think rewind maybe 3 years ago it wouldn't have been the case, but so now you have, so besides those two who are your top ones, as we said, now you have Stenberg and Lindstein and Adam Jaracek from last year, and then probably another first rounder coming up in the draft coming up soon, which who knows if they do something with that pick in the next couple of weeks. So we don't even know about that, but hopefully we'll see. But so who stands out among those names, or even others that maybe fly under the radar?
Yeah. I think for guys who stood out this year, I thought Stenberg was pretty impressive when he came over to the AHL. Obviously, I didn't really see much of the last 20 or so games that Springfield played. I watched a lot of Springfield games last year, more than I should have, honestly. But I thought the first couple games when he came over mid-season, which is a tough jump, obviously, when you're coming from the SHL where you've got a pretty nice lifestyle. You play Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and you're just moving around Sweden. Whereas you come to the AHL, like I mentioned earlier, you're playing 3 games in 3 nights, 4 games in 5 nights. I thought he adjusted pretty nicely. I think he made a lot of plays. He's just really slick, always on the right side of the puck too. And I was impressed with him. Obviously, I didn't see a lot of the final 20 games of the year, and I think he barely scored at all in those 20 games. So maybe he just kind of ran out of gas. I can't say for sure because I didn't see, but I was impressed with what I saw. I think he's a bit of a longer term project just because I think he's just not physically developed yet. Like I think you see a picture of him after the game holding his first goal puck and he just looks so skinny. But that's not always a bad thing for a prospect too, because it's not hard to put on weight if you're really committed to it, especially with when you're a prospect playing in Europe from your age 16 to age 20 season, you don't really have much free time off from hockey to lift weights and, eat big. So I think he's going to get bigger. He'll get to NHL size and weight at some point, and I think he'll be a pretty useful player.
Yeah. And then one more thing with the prospects too, with because I feel like with all like the skaters we've talked about and the forwards and some defenders, we're also some goalies to keep in mind. Obviously, Jordan Bennington and Hofer are probably your tandem. I know for next season, but Hofer is going to be a pending RFA next season, correct? To make the confirm that,
I
right?
think he's RFA this year.
This season. Okay, so they have to do something with that, but I'm sure they'll figure that out. But he's a very good goalie, and who knows how long term we can really have him, because I'm sure teams would probably like to have that, especially ones who are maybe rebuilding and would like to maybe rely on him a little bit. So so we have some in the system, and I'm not quite all educated on it. I know there's Colton Ellis as one of them, but I know there's one more that was starting with Springfield that if you could elaborate on a little bit, because you need to educate us on this.
Yeah. I think there's only, as it stands, there's only 3 goalies in the Blues system, and so the other guy is Vadim Zherenko, who I used to think had a pretty good shot at making it. It doesn't seem like that's going to pan out. I think he might even be going back to Russia for next year. And the other guy is Will Cranley, who I don't know. I don't think I haven't seen a ton of him that suggests he's going to be an NHL guy. But Colton Ellis, I think, is pretty interesting. He has been in the system for a long time. I think he was drafted in 2019, so that's 6 years in the system already. He's really done his time too. Like he was in the ECHL consistently until 2 years ago, but the last 2 seasons he's been fantastic and really put himself back on the radar. It's a tough spot though as a quad A goalie. You're basically just waiting for somebody to get injured. So who knows when we'll see him, but really encouraging to know that you have somebody in the system who has been putting up good numbers in the AHL.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that'll be interesting to see what happens just given Hofer's contract situation. I'm not really sure what other teams are going to be looking at. I'm assuming people think highly of him. So I guess people will throw out offer sheets. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, actually, I do. It's funny. Like, I think I texted one of my buddies earlier in the season when we were like brainstorming offer sheets, just looking at RFAs for the summer. Really, in my opinion, Hofer is like maybe the only player in the league where an offer sheet actually makes sense. Because last year, where the Blues had 2 of them, that was basically the perfect storm scenario where you had a capped out team, 2 young players who are clearly talented and good, but have not broken out in the NHL and aren't appreciated yet by their team. And Hofer's kind of in that spot too, where he's a young player who's clearly very good. He's put up good numbers for 2 straight years. But the Blues have Binnington for another 2 seasons, and the Blues aren't capped out by any means, but I'm sure they want to add to their roster in other ways. Like, are they going to want to pay Hofer more than what they have? Like, for example, if a team offer sheets Hofer at the same number that the Blues offer sheeted Broberg last year, let's say they do 4.658 or 4.586 for 2 years, are the Blues going to match that and pay their backup goalie almost $5 million? I don't know. That's interesting to me. And the fact that he can be offer sheeted in 13 days and he doesn't have a contract yet, I think that's a little interesting to me too, meaning that like that negotiation could be a little tricky, especially since, the Blues had 3 RFAs going into the season and they already signed 2 of them. They signed Neighbors and Toropchenko months ago in like October. So I think that is one to watch for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they're probably they may have to let him walk now that you're kind of talking about it, because I mean, they're already paying Binnington a good amount of money for a goalie contract. So I don't know. I don't really know if they're going to be willing to match that based off of what you're kind of saying, if that's what it's going to take. So I think that's a tough sell for the Blues. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point, honestly, but
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. I do want to transition a little bit, Sam, to just the league wide and look at the entire NHL and how the Blues sort of fit in here. Obviously, Florida Panthers back-to-back Stanley Cup champions as of last night. Probably the most complete team in the NHL. I don't think it's that close. They have an absolute stud goaltender, great D-men, and an elite offense as well, and perform really good in the collective sense, where you just don't have a bunch of individuals. I would assume the stats back that up. But from your perspective, tracking the whole NHL, what teams stick out on the statistical front that are really performing much better on average against all the other teams in the NHL?
That's a good question. I would say more or less like the teams at the top of the league are the teams who are, I guess analytically the best teams. Like I think there's a couple paper tigers in there every year. Like obviously Washington this year was the team where everyone looked at and it's like, okay, this team is not real. Like they're a good team, don't get me wrong. They're a playoff team, but honestly, like I think if they played any other team besides Montreal in the first round, they would have lost, even though they won the President's Trophy. But by and large, the teams at the top of the league are the best teams. Like Florida, obviously fantastic. Their underlying numbers have been so good for 5 years. Tampa Bay was really good this year. Edmonton's really good. I think really the last, at least as far as I can remember, the conference finals teams are pretty much all teams that are top 10 in 5-on-5 expected goal percentage. Like sometimes a weird one sneaks in there, like Montreal made it in the bubble. Or no, that was Dallas, but Montreal made it the next year. Like sometimes there's a paper tiger that will sneak in, but by and large, the teams that make it are the best.
The Capitals thing, and Luke, I'll let you go, but
Yeah.
I feel vindicated now that you say that. I mean, the goals save above expected for the Capitals and the goals above expected were completely insane. Like no other team even scratched the surface. Like 35 goals save above expected, 30 goals above expected that they score. And I'm like, this is not sustainable. There's no way that they can hold up. And obviously that it reared its ugly head in the second round. But I totally agree with you on that front. But Luke, I'll let you go.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was gonna say something similar because I'm with you on the Capitals thing, but I for me it's watching last week's games with the Panthers and versus Edmonton, and like everybody went into that series always saying like, hey, like both teams have gotten better, and this is just gonna be an all time battle, and then like as it kind of turned out, like it was a battle, but Edmonton they won their 2 games in overtime, so they had to stretch it out and they had to work hard for those victories while Florida had that one overtime, and the rest they kind of killed them in those games. So, I mean, how are they built so well? And again, this cap era, it's so weird with that. So, it's just amazing to me how they have so many superstars. And I think when you point to the trades like Seth Jones, and then you have Gustav Forsling in there, and then obviously with Reinhardt and Bennett. So, and obviously Barkov, who's a Selke contender every single year. So it's just amazing to me how they built that team with the cap like this. So is this kind of how teams are going to try and build their team like? Is it going to be like the Florida Panthers?
Yeah, I mean, I think teams will try to build it like the Florida Panthers. And like you said, it's crazy. You just look up and down their roster. Their third line, I'd put their third line up against 60% of the teams in the league's first line. Like Marchand, Luostarinen, and Lundell. Those guys are all giving you borderline first line caliber of play. Even Luostarinen, like that guy's really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be really tough to emulate, though. Like you look up and down their roster, and there's no guys who are like those guys are more or less paid accordingly too. Like I don't think there's really that many guys on the team where it's like, okay, this guy's on a sweetheart deal. Like, yeah, all those guys could probably like make a little bit more money, but I don't know. It's like it's almost a marvel the way they do it.
Yeah.
And part of that is they have the no income tax in Florida, which everyone talks about. I think that's dumb. Like, whatever. But I think maybe one lesson you can take, like seeing how they fit all those good players under the cap, is they pay the bottom of their roster nothing. I saw a tweet last night. Their fourth line are all under $1 million, and their third pair defense is all under $1 million. And those guys are like capable NHL players, but they're paying them nothing, which allows them to stack the rest of their team with, I can't remember off the top of my head what those guys on the third line are making, but like they went and got Seth Jones, who has a $9.5 million contract this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But
they're not even paying like Mikla a lot of money. Like I didn't know what his contract would be, but what is it like? It's under $3 million, I think, a year, which I think is crazy, just given how big and strong that. I mean, Mikla obviously, like, I like our defense now, but I mean, when you saw him play in the cup, you're like, wow, it would be kind of nice to have someone like that sometimes. But that is what it is. But I can't believe they've managed their contracts the way they have. But I do have to ask, since it's the elephant in the room now that the Oilers have lost 2 straight Stanley Cups, where does McDavid go from here? He's got 1 year left on his contract. What are your honest thoughts?
I don't know. I guess you probably run it back if you're the Oilers. I think they can find more ways to get better. Obviously, it really sucks that they lost Holloway and Broberg for them. But that team's going to be really good again. They've got. Well, actually, I probably need to look a little closer. I could see them I could see them falling back a little bit. The rest of the roster is getting old, but I think there'll be avenues for them to improve, and at least in the short term, like I don't see why the Oilers can't be in the Stanley Cup Finals again next year. They've got so many good pieces. I don't know. I'd be shocked if McDavid leaves. That would be crazy.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah,
I would root for it though. That'd be cool.
It would be really interesting. It would shock the whole league and it would take it by storm. But I will say though, with Edmonton, like they did a couple of things. I'll give them one thing with the benefit of the doubt with the Cup final was that they were without Hyman, and that guy was so crucial to their team, and it just messed up all the line combinations for them. So but again, you got to find ways to win without this guy who's in your top six. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think all these teams were banged up, so you can't always talk about that. But to me, like their moves, obviously with Broberg and Holloway, but then they replaced them. I think they had some good stuff in mind, but they had Arvidsson they had added, and they added Jeff Skinner and all these veterans. And don't get me wrong, like those are experienced guys, but not a ton of playoff experience. Arvidsson with Nashville a little bit, but you almost kind of lost the want to get back with Broberg and Holloway because Broberg was one of their best defensemen last year in the Cup final. And so they didn't really, at least Arvidsson, Skinner, they didn't really experience the disappointment. I'm kind of quoting Chicklets from today because I thought it was a great point. But I don't know. It just seems like that Bill Zito from the Panthers, their GM, just outsmarted everybody else in the league. And I thought Armstrong would have the pickup of the year with Broberg, big pickups of the year with Broberg and Holloway. But I think Bill Zito outclassed him with getting Marchand and Seth Jones in the trade deadline.
McDavid's going to Columbus, so
yeah,
I think that's it. That's all we have to say about that.
I'll bet a lot of money on that. Yeah,
go Waterbug, get him there.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. Their moves were great, but also it was like we talk about the I shunned off the quote unquote advantage that Florida has for being Florida. I think they really flexed their muscles in those two acquisitions of being Florida. Like Marchand wasn't going to go to anywhere else, so they got him for nothing. Seth Jones, kind of the same deal. I can't remember what the story was behind what that deal was, but obviously he didn't want to be in Chicago anymore, and they flexed their muscles and got Seth Jones. Yeah, I mean, that's the right philosophy though. Like if you got a good team, like go out and get really good players. Yeah, and obviously Marchand's incredible. I love that guy.
Yeah. No, it was insane. Yeah. I mean, hopefully the Blues can figure out a way to somehow manage a cap like that because Zito just outclassed everybody, I think, at the end of the day. And but again, everybody wants to go to Florida because they knew they had the same chances they did. And I saw something in the interview last night. I think it was Marchand in the post game. He's like, everybody wrote us off, and like every single round they're writing us off. I'm like, nobody wrote you off, man. Everybody thought you were going to win this thing. What you wrote him off, Nick?
No, I said I did not.
Yeah, exactly.
I did not.
It made no sense to me.
I hate that stuff. Like, yeah, the best team in the league until proven otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
yeah, I mean, I think everyone needs that internal motivation, but
yeah, right.
That in fact did not objectively happen. I don't think one person was writing the Florida Panthers off when they got immensely better, especially at the deadline. I do want to ask you something a little bit more personal to your Twitter, Sam. So from your perspective, since you've started it and have been gaining followers, traction, and churning out some stats, what's been your most favorite moment or interaction since you started your Twitter page?
Oh, that's a good question.
Besides us.
Yeah, besides us.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I think coming up with my own projects has been a lot of fun. Just like getting excited about trying to teach myself something and learn a little bit more about the game has been really cool. I kind of knew how to do data viz and stuff like that, but just thinking of my own project and then sharing it with people, like I got a pretty big Discord group chat where we all talk about hockey and, we work on things from time to time. And that's been really cool. Just building like a community of people who are obviously really interested in the sport and, nerdy about it. Like I am. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. And I will say, I wanted to also ask this one, top of this one, Nick, was, I feel like there's got to be some haters out there. I know there are. There's not as many for us since we're still starting out. But I feel like with you, I will say though, you have stats to back up a lot of your opinions, so it's hard to deny them. But do you encounter that a lot? I feel like that sometimes Blues Twitter can get a little feisty.
Yeah, I mean, that's the internet for you. Like,
Yeah.
it just depends on depends on the day. Like sometimes I think it's fun to argue about stuff, especially if I know that or if I feel very strongly that I am right. I think it's fun to argue. I don't know. There's sometimes too where I'll tweet something and I'll not be sure of it, and then people will disagree, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, like I actually kind of agree with you. Like I don't even know if I believe what I just said. And usually, if I feel like that, I'll actually will just delete the tweet. But no, yeah, it's fun. Like, I think it's fun to interact with people because usually if you respond nicely and like in a fun, argumentative way, it's actually fun and not toxic. But sometimes you got to block people too, I guess. But
for sure, I agree with you.
that's
there you
that's
go.
the internet, like it's been like that way forever.
Yeah. All right. So Nick and I are going to go back and forth here. We'll this will be quick, and then we'll let you go. So we're going to do a little bit of lightning round here, just for fun. No need to elaborate on some of these answers, but if you want to. So I would say right now, favorite non-Blues player to watch for you, whether it's about the stats or just even just watching them on TV.
Oh man, I had a list of this recently.
Okay.
Marchand, I love Marchand. I really like watching Logan Cooley on Utah. He's a new guy in the league.
Yeah.
I always thought Kevin Fiala was a ton of fun. I have one guy. Who is it? I can't remember who it is.
No, you've already named three. We're not going to put any more pressure to name any more.
All right, yeah, those three. There's some underrated skillers, I'd say, and obviously Marchand's got the grit thing too.
Yeah, it's so weird liking, because I even find myself liking Marchand too, and I hated him so much when he was on the Bruins. Oh my god.
Yeah.
But, what do you think for next year's Stanley Cup prediction? Very early, obviously, just ended. What do you think?
Okay, I think Florida gets back there versus.
Don't say Edmonton.
No, I'm not going to say Edmonton. Okay. I think they're going to lose. Oh man, I haven't thought this hard about this. Yeah, well, okay, we'll say Florida versus the Kings.
Okay.
Yeah,
Whoa,
I think the Kings were really good this year, and I think they're going to be good next year too.
And they've
should have
fallen
won that.
victim.
Honestly, I don't even know if I believe what I just said.
It's okay. Well, it's locked in now.
Yeah, Florida versus,
take it back.
versus LA. Let's do
No,
it.
it'd be interesting because they've literally lost to Edmonton 4 years straight, maybe 5. It's one of those two.
5th time's the charm.
Oh yeah, geez. Okay, final one. Bold take for the Blues over the next 12 months. Obviously, free agency coming up, and then we have next season to look forward to with a bunch of new stuff happening with some prospects coming up and all that, as we've all talked about. So, bold take, give it to us.
I think they're going to finish top 5 in the league this year by points. I'm not going to make a prediction about the playoffs or anything, but I think they're going to finish top 5 in points.
Wow.
I think Montgomery teams do not finish below 10th in the league if they have them for a whole season, and they have a team that is already good, and I think they're going to improve in the next 2 weeks, and I think the young guys are going to improve next year. I think Thomas is going to have 100 points. I think they're going to finish top 5 in the league.
Wow. I love that. That is bold, and I love
Yep.
that, and it makes sense when it comes to Montgomery. I like that. Okay, and then final thing, where can listeners follow you and see your work and all of that? I know it's on X with STL Analytics, but anything else?
Yeah, just on STL Analytics. I have a pinned tweet in my bio. I did a bunch of like hand-tracked micro statistics for the Springfield Thunderbirds games last year, so there's some fun prospect stats in there. Maybe I'll come back to that a little bit. Also been helping my friend out with, he's sort of building his own little expected goal model, and he's using like the 2025 playoffs to for the start of it, where he's just tracking a bunch of shots, basically every shot on goal in the playoffs. I'm sure there'll be a link to that at some point, but yeah, that's in progress. So
Awesome. All right. Well, Sam, thank you, man. Really appreciate it. Bunch of insights that I think all Blues fans need to hear. And I know we were very enlightened of it. So really appreciate you coming on. And hopefully this won't be the last time we're hearing from you.
yeah, for sure. Really appreciate you guys having me on. I had a great time.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks,
man.
Sam.
Thanks, guys.